my name is Stacy Levy. I am a speech-language pathologist and a co-owner of Dynamic Therapy Specialist in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Today, I'm going to talk with you about how pediatric therapy helps children with their literacy skills. But first, we need to come to an understanding of what literacy means in the therapy world. So, what literacy is the ability to read, write, comprehend, and effectively communicate in a written form. Literacy is not only basic decoding and encoding skills, but also the capacity to understand, interpret, and critically analyze information. For our purposes of working with children, though, we focus mainly on what is considered breaking the code when we're talking about literacy, which those are those encoding and decoding skills along with the early comprehension skills. So let's dive a little deeper. Encoding. Encoding is a technical term that's used for translating sounds into letters, which is what we would refer to as spelling in the literacy work. An example of that would be if I hear the sounds b, at, I'm going to translate those sounds that I heard into the letter formations B, A, T. So decoding is another word that we use in the literacy world, and that's a technical term for interpreting symbols such as letters and attaching meaning to them, such as sounds. This is what we would refer to mainly as like the sounding out of words when we're talking about early literacy work. So you may wonder if your child is struggling with early literacy or ongoing literacy skills. Today I'm going to go over with you the top 10 calls that come into our office that typically parents are sharing their concerns related about literacy and ultimately end up needing our assistance. So there are 10. The first one is that their child verbalizes a dislike for reading or writing. They might say that they don't like it. They might say that it's too hard. You might get some crying, or you might get some lying. There might be instances where the child is putting off their reading and writing assignments, or they are telling you that they are doing them and actually not doing them. That's a concern. Another concern is that the child is a poor speller. So beyond the spelling test, beyond what the children are actually memorizing and having to put down on paper, which if there are struggles with that, that's a concern as well. But it's more so when the child goes to write, they do their free writing, their written expression. And if you're noticing that the child is relying more so on the sounded out strategy as opposed to the phonics rules and expectations, then that's going to be a concern as you get into the older grades as well. A concern that comes up is when their child is a guesser and goer. That is not a technical term. That is a term that we talk about when the child is reading and they see a word. Sometimes they can see a multisyllabic word, a word that's pretty long, and they might just say, I don't know what that word is. I'm gonna look at the first letter or the first two letters, and I'm just gonna guess and continue to read. Now, the children who have a pretty strong vocabulary might be somewhat successful and be positively reinforced because they can figure out a word that sounds the same or means the same, so their comprehension may not be affected that much. However, this guessing and going is not a reliable strategy for later on learning. And so this red flag of sorts of this guessing and going is something that we need to look at and be concerned about. We hear a lot also in the phone calls that come into our office is that their child may be in third grade or older and they only want to read these books with pictures. And I do understand that graphic novels are a very popular genre right now, and it has fulfilled a need and a passion for learning and reading, definitely. It's when the child will only read those books, not just graphic novels, but just books in general that are stories that have pictures to accompany them. That's indicating to us that there might be a difficulty in the comprehension, and then we need to dig a little bit deeper. Along with comprehension, a concern that parents express is that their child is a slow reader. Maybe the child has to slow down in order to be more accurate. But what we do know is that when they slow down, they lose that capacity to really truly comprehend and engage in the passage. So if your child is a slow reader, then we also want to have a conversation. So speaking of conversations, you want to have conversations with your child about what they are reading. And so parents will call and say that they are asking their children what they've read about, and their children are really having a difficult time sharing with them either the summary or the main points or anything along those lines. And so if your child is having a hard time telling you what the story is about, that is also a concern that we hear often. Those are for older children, these concerns, and kind of taking a step back and looking at the younger approach. And so children should really be engaged at the early preschool age in rhyming and the nursery rhymes and the fun things, the ABC songs. And if your child is not actively or happily engaging in these type of activities, or if they're struggling to learn the ABC song or these number chicka chicka boom songs, those sort of things, then that is a concern, and it's a concern that we need to address as well. One of the top concerns that we have when parents call in is that they have a history of learning disabilities in their family. Maybe it's dyslexia, maybe it's a language disorder, maybe it's just struggling to learn in general. And so we want to hear that concern. We want to know that history, because there is a genetic component to a lot of these difficulties, and we want to be able to help your child through that. Speaking of helping you get through that, getting through the sloppy handwriting, this is number 9. So the number 9 concern that parents have is that I just can't read what my child is writing. That could be a fine motor difficulty that our occupational therapist, a DTS, could help them with, but it also could be a compensation strategy. It could be that the child just does not feel confident and comfortable with the spelling patterns that they're expected to use or the word choice that they're expected to use. And so children are smart, and they will figure out ways to continue to make their parents proud while also hiding some things that are difficult. So sloppy handwriting can be a compensation for early literacy difficulties. And finally, the number 10 concern that we have with the parents coming in and calling is that their child has a long history of ear infections. And so we do know that the impact of recurring ear infections can be widespread, whether it's to their articulation, their speech sounds, and then eventually to their literacy skills. We want you to know that that is a concern, and a concern that might drive you to calling for a specialist. So now you might wonder, what does it look like after you have expressed your concerns, you've raised your concerns to someone at Dynamic Therapy Specialist? The first thing that we ask you to do is to fill out our intake paperwork. And it is rather lengthy, but the reason why it is lengthy is because it actually contains many screenings that help us determine a specific direction for your evaluation. And so it gets us to really dive deep into what could possibly be the underlying difficulty that is causing these concerns. Our team looks over the information after we've received it from you, and we compile all of our recommendations, and then we prioritize and we talk with the families about what that priority should be. Maybe it is an auditory processing evaluation. So we need to rule out any auditory-based weaknesses that could be impacting the child's ability to build a strong literacy foundation. Or maybe it's a recommendation for a speech and language evaluation with a literacy-based component to it. That is going to look at the language-based areas that are causing the literacy concerns. And finally, we might even recommend an occupational therapy evaluation. In that event, we might be considering, are there primitive reflexes that need to be addressed? Are there fine motor skills that are impacting the child's ability to perform at their fullest potential? Whatever it is, we look at that intake information and we make our recommendations based off of that. And when the evaluation then is completed, that's when we create this plan of care that will help drive your child to the point of success. So with that plan of care, the therapy at DTS will improve the child's literacy skills by targeting the underlying auditory, language, and fine motor deficits that we find through the intake paperwork, through the evaluation process, that are ultimately hindering your child's reading and writing abilities. Our specialists at Dynamic Therapy Specialists actually focus on phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, vocabulary development, comprehension strategies, decoding skills, encoding skills, handwriting skills, and the primitive reflex integration in order to best help your child. So we had this comprehensive look at what is it that is causing the literacy difficulties. We also work from a bottom-up approach that use methods that are known to work for struggling learners. We incorporate speech-to-print methodology that is supported by the most recent research on how brains learn how to read and write. We also incorporate brain-body integration techniques. These are going to help empower the child to gain more confidence and improve their self-concept about their literacy journey. And so within all of this, we are driving to create a child who will love to read and write and reach their fullest potential. So if you're interested in learning more about how therapy can help your child's literacy skills, their literacy journey, if you're interested in just talking more about literacy, please contact us at Dynamic Therapy Specialists, and we'd be happy to talk with you about your concerns.